record here. And okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Kwesi Millington. You probably know me from online in many different forms, speech coach and speaker. And today I just wanted to kind of bring people together. Obviously, we're in the common area that we like to learn about speaking, maybe creating keynotes or various things. So I thought, let me do this Q&A today. We are in a time where everybody's kind of isolated, so I think it's kind of nice to be able to get together and see each other on screen, on camera. If this is something that people want to do going forward, I'm going to make this a regular thing, but we'll see how it goes, and we'll play it by ear as we go along. There's a lot of people that said they were coming. We'll see if they pop in throughout. I'm expecting about 15 people or so, but we know how it goes sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So what I've done is I emailed everyone and asked for questions beforehand. So I have a list of the questions that were asked via email. So my plan is to go through those as we go along. And of course, as you have questions, either just say them out if we're not too busy, or type them into the chat and we'll get to them, okay? And that's how we'll run this. So what I'll probably do is I will answer the questions that I have here. And if something comes up as I'm answering, please pipe in, or if you have a related question to veer off. And then I may get answers from you because I don't know everything. So I'm learning as I go along as well. Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So if you don't know my story, my background is I used to be a police officer. I'm now a resiliency speaker and coach, but I also am a speech coach. And that all started for me in 2013 when I walked into a meeting where everybody was clapping all the time. And I thought it was a little weird. It's called Toastmasters. And I fell in love with the group that I eventually joined. And when I started to speak, I loved speaking and sharing my story. I did not think that I was going to get into coaching until I met the 1999 world champion of public speaking, Craig Valentine. He has a program, has had a program for a while called the Certified World-Class Speaking Coach Program. And I just love being able to not only evaluate speakers in Toastmasters, but to be able to help people bring out their own stories and keynotes. So I became a certified world-class speech coach. I created Communicate to Create Online, which is under my umbrella of KM Communications. And I'm here to help. So people are creating mostly keynotes, but also stories, whether it's for Toastmasters contests or presentations for corporate or work, but mostly keynotes. I'm here. And so I want to be able to make sure people can have the help they need. And I think at this time, not a lot of us are doing a lot of speaking, of course, but you may be speaking online, or you may be just preparing your keynote. This may be the time to do the back end of your business. So I wanted to make sure that I was available not only now, but going forward. So what I want to do is, for everyone here, let's just go one at a time. Tell me what you're doing in speaking now, what you were doing, what you plan on doing, and what brought you here today. So we'll start with Ethel.
Okay, welcome everyone, Mr. Chair and fellow speakers. We have just, what I am doing. We have initiated doing virtual meetings. And I'm totally concerned on the technique of the virtual meeting, because we're taught that we have to use our bodies and all of these things. And this is why I want to get your help in how we can do a speech so that you can see the body moving. Is it the distance from the screen or whatever? When I started, actually, my daughter began the program. She made a club in Woodstock, and then she told me I needed to go to Toastmasters. So she opened a program club for me. So now I'm one of the founding members of the club. So I'm deeply involved with the club, and this is where I met you. And it's not keynote speakers, it's just learning the value of Toastmasters that I'm interested in. And I know you have those qualities.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, and we're going to get to those questions. I wrote down some. You sent me some
Yep.
by email. Kareen.
Yep.
Yes. So I am in Toastmasters as well. I joined in April 2017.
Percy, I'm on the computer.
Okay, so I just muted Ethel for a minute.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Yes.
Kareen.
Yes, I'm in Toastmasters. I joined in April 2017. And when I joined, in part of my research, I discovered your videos. So that's how I got on the community, your link.
Okay.
And I joined Toastmasters because over the years, I've had careers where I need to speak, whether in sales or marketing, and I'm good with that. You put me in a small group, I'm good. But every time I faced a lectern, I would speak so fast that it would be like a blur. So I joined Toastmasters to overcome that. And I have, because I am no longer afraid of the lectern, but I still think I need to develop my skills because I'm not flawless or as comfortable as you are or other persons are. So I could speak and I'm comfortable speaking, but I think I still need to work on honing those skills.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why I'm here.
Okay, perfect. As we're going through, think of specifically what skill you'd like to work on now. We eat an elephant one bite at a time, as they say. So think of what you want to work on right now and how I can answer any questions to help you with that. Okay, Kareen?
Okay, good, will do.
Okay, Karen.
I've also in Toastmasters. I've been in Toastmasters for about 10 years now. And I have my DTM, so I've got lots of experience in the 5 to 7 minute speeches. What I don't have any experience in is the longer speeches, other than a few of the advanced speeches were a little bit longer. So as you know, Kwesi, I'm working on developing a keynote. I've retired from the government recently. Actually, it was not that recent, it's 9 months ago, wow. So I'm looking to perhaps start making some extra money by doing some public speaking, but I have a lot to learn before I can get to that point. So that's why I'm here. Absorb as much Kwesi as I can.
Okay, no problem. Glad I could help. Raphael.
Hi, Kwesi.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. My interest in this meeting stems from the invitation you sent me. As you know, I'm a retired post-secondary educator, and over the last few months, I've been doing some training with the Durham Children's Aid Society, the Whitby Historical Society, and the Ontario Correctional Institute. I'm very comfortable speaking in public because I spent most of my life doing that. And I've been invited to join a Toastmasters group, which I haven't done so yet, but I thought I'll just sit in and listen to what's happening and maybe I'll make my mind up. So consider me more or less a guest.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Raphael. Yeah, so I mean, I attract a lot of Toastmasters to me because I speak at a lot of clubs, and Toastmasters are people that are generally interested in speaking. You have some other keynote speakers that are part of it, but yeah, you will hear some Toastmasters references here. And I'll let other people sell Toastmasters because I can sell it to you all day, but if you hear it from other people, it will probably mean even that much more.
Sure.
Joanne, do you have, I'm gonna unmute you. Do you want to, let me see if I can unmute you.
Mute myself.
Joanne, can you hear us?
Am I mute or unmuted?
You're unmuted. We can hear you. Hello?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Can everyone else hear Joanne?
Yes, I can.
And we're hearing you.
Can't see you, but we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, Joanne?
The word they use.
All right, we're having some difficulty with Joanne. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll circle around to Clinton. Are you there?
Yes, but I'm not seeing anything or anyone. I may have to sign back in. I'm having some challenges.
Well, we can hear you, Clinton. We can hear you.
Yes, but
All right.
I am just showing a blank screen here.
Okay. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. Keep working on that. All we've done, Clinton, is just gone around and said, basically, what are you working on right now with what's going on with the COVID thing? And what would you like to be working on? And what brought you to the call? That's all.
Oh, okay, okay. You want me to speak now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Well, I can't see anyone, but I'm happy to be on the call. What I'm working on right now, I'm doing a lot of writing, and I am doing a lot of speaking at different clubs virtually.
Okay.
I was on a call this morning. And I'm trying to work on putting together, working on a few things, putting together a keynote speech
Okay.
to identify myself, and I'm also working on a couple other projects.
Okay. Okay. And you're just here as a guest, picking up what you can today, or is there something specific you want to ask?
I'm just here.
Yeah.
I'm just here as a guest. I see that you were doing this, and I want to support it and see what I can learn and grow from this, being together with a group of people, like-minded people.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. And Frank, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Frank, so just so you know, I'm going around and I'm asking people what brings them here. So just think about that. And what I'll do is, since more people are coming in, for everyone here, just put in the chat box, kind of what brought you here, what you're working on right now. And if any questions come up as I'm going through the questions I've been asked, just type it into the box, okay? So in the interest of time, I won't just ask everyone as we're going along. So yeah, you see that from Joanna. Joanne, your connection's failing. Just do the best you can. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the questions I've been asked, and I'll answer them. If things come up as we're going along, I've unmuted you unless you have background noise. You can pipe in anytime, okay? This is just a discussion today, okay? All right, so I'm gonna unmute all. All right, so first of all, I'm not gonna mention her name, but there's one of the people from our community. Who, right now because I'm looking at the bathroom. Oh, I guess I'm gonna have to mute somebody.
I did.
All right. Okay, so I think I muted you, Ethel, for a minute. So she's been sick for 9 days, and she doesn't know if it's a positive diagnosis for COVID. So just keep her thoughts and prayers because she's getting her tests back over the next day or two. So I'm just gonna follow up with her. That's why she couldn't come today. I'll keep her anonymity secret, and just wanted to mention that my thoughts are going out to her today. So the first question that I'm gonna answer comes from Sandeep, and he asked a Toastmasters related question about using Zoom or Google Hangouts as the new platform to run meetings and keeping members hopeful. Now, we have Toastmasters on the call here, so if you have any ideas, please let me know as well. I know, Karen, you're doing virtual meetings. Clinton, I think you are as well. And I think that right now, doing a virtual meeting is what's going to keep members hopeful. Of course, Ethel, is what's going to keep members hopeful if you can keep them online. And it doesn't have to be as structured as it used to be, I would say. Try to think of it more as having a conversation with your club members. Ask them how they are. Maybe do an extended table topics. Just get people together so that they know they're not alone. I would think that is one of the main ways to keep people hopeful. And running a meeting on Zoom, literally, if you have a computer, an iPad, or an iPhone, you can run a Zoom meeting. I'm not a tech expert, though I'm online a lot. All I did was I signed up for Zoom, and you can do up to 40 minutes with as many participants as you want. You pay $20 a month if you want to do beyond that. I have a personal account where I've paid more because I know this call may go more than 40 minutes, but that's totally optional. And what some clubs I've seen even do is they do half an hour with as many participants as they want. They take their break and then they sign on again for a new meeting. So it becomes an hour meeting, but you don't pay any money for it. So that's an idea that you may want to do. So I'm going to be actually recording this and putting this online. So I know Sandeep's not here. There's the answer to your question. Does anyone have anything to add to that for keeping members hopeful or using Zoom? Ethel, I'm going to get to your questions you emailed me, but if you want, go ahead and ask a question and I'll let you know if I'm going to get to it.
The thing that we're having with our virtual meeting is we actually have speeches being done.
Okay.
So it's not complicated, but you have to have two windows, one where you have the speaker so you can see them and one for the timer. And then the person in the back. There's so much technicality to them, but it's working smoothly. But our intention is to get more people onto Zoom meetings, because Toastmasters is face on and they're so objective to not being on Zoom. They want the personal reaction. So that's a question I would stimulate the people to come. It's great to talk to them and ask them to come, but how do we keep them involved? Okay. Between the two different, the ethics of Toastmasters compared to, coaching. The ethics is that we have the agenda and we do our speeches and everything runs the same, but we don't have enough people coming to the meetings. So I guess I'm concerned about how many we get there to keep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before I share my thoughts, does anyone have any other thoughts on that, Karen or Clinton? Karen, go ahead.
I've been on 2 different clubs so far doing virtual. One of them we've had up to 25 people on the screen. And Ethel, the issue about having to keep multiple windows, I don't know whether you're aware of being able to pin one of the windows, so you can pin the timer, and that one, the timer is always available.
Yeah.
So that works well for us. The other club, we have the same problem of getting people to come out. Today, we just finished one at lunchtime today, and there were 6 people, and even the person who said she was going to speak wasn't able to connect. So we've had experience both with speakers sitting and speaking and standing up and speaking. Personally, I like the speaking and sitting in this situation, because it's a virtual meeting. It's not the same as a regular meeting. So I mean, that's my personal opinion. But so I've seen it done both ways.
Okay.
A lot of the issues that we had at the beginning have been resolved, and I think that's why we were able to get 25 people to log in. Also, it's a very high energy club and people log in anyway.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Yes, I have been attending a lot of virtual meetings as well. Our club, the club I'm a member at, we have like 40 odd members, and at the last meeting they had 59 because they invited persons from the Caribbean. So we had the theme was Beyond Borders, so you had a number of persons participating from other countries. But generally the meetings we still have good attendance, maybe not just from the club members, but from other clubs who are participating to learn what you're doing. And because it's now online, you probably could not have attended that meeting before, but you now have the opportunity to. I've attended meetings in Manchester, England, all over the world. So that's one of the advantages of this platform, is that there are clubs you might not have visited before that you have been visiting. And we're doing pretty good with the technology, because what we encourage is that persons log on beforehand and you check their mic, you check their camera, you check their speaking area, see if they plan to stand, to ensure that when they actually are doing your speech, that we're going to see them and hear them well. And I find that increases the level of comfort of the members. And so far, I've been to meetings where you have minimum of 3 speeches. I've seen 5, 7, 10. Our division actually had 2 speechathons, and we had like 7 or 8 speeches. So generally speaking, I think many persons are embracing it. The first division, because I'm in Division B of District 81, the first division call, we had like over 90 persons on that call.
Okay.
And the second one, we had like 50 odd. So generally speaking, I think persons, it's an opportunity to learn more about presenting on video, and we're doing a lot of training sessions, one-on-one and in groups, so that persons are more comfortable and they are in a better position to make a good presentation.
Does that help, Ethel?
Yes.
Yeah, so the final thing I'll add on that before we go on to the next question is if you can have a personal touch to the meeting, so it doesn't feel like a regular Toastmasters meeting, always think about your audience. So maybe people are dealing with, social anxiety or just various issues at home. So you can have a fun theme, like maybe you can just do a quick 3-minute speech, 5 ways to manage social isolation, 5 ways to deal with anxiety or boredom at home right now. So something that people are currently dealing with, and just call it, like, we're going to start with a special presentation from Ethel, a 3-minute thing, and you can just do a quick speech on that. And so maybe some of the members that maybe they're not coming because they're feeling a little bit bored or down because of what's going on, they'll say, okay, you know what, I'll tune in for that because there's something else besides a regular meeting going on. So those are things that may help to draw some of that membership back. Don't think of it as a regular meeting. Think of it as a little bit more than that right now. Make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question. And like I said, if you have questions, let me know. Bryant asked me, how do you craft a keynote that has a value that justifies a 10K, 30K, or 50K budget? So before I won't talk about budget, because budget is all about what industry you're in. There's industry and what type of speech you want to do. There's too much to discuss when it comes to budget. What I would say is don't look at value as a dollar sign. Look at it as a solution to a problem. Knowing who you're going to speak to and the problems they have specifically is more important than, okay, I got to write a $5,000 speech or a $10,000 speech. So for instance, I speak to first responders, and I know that a big issue in the first responder community is avoiding burnout and overcoming depression, because about 30% of sick time taken by first responders is not due to regular reasons like they just have a cold. It's due to mental health issues and burnout. So if I can come up with a keynote that builds resiliency into those officers that addresses their problem, and I can put it in a value proposition to the buyers, to the people that are bringing me in, then they will bring me in. So think of the problem that you're solving, the people that you're serving. That's why it's important to know your audience and know the problem that you're solving. And in that way you say, this is the solution to your problem. And it feels like not, I'm just a speaker out there, but I'm solving your problem, like a one-on-one conversation. So does anyone have any questions on that one before I go on? I'm going to go on to number 3. Clinton, this is your question.
Is that?
Strategy for an effective keynote. Okay, so the strategy for an effective keynote is more than a 1-minute answer, as Karen can attest to. But I will answer this as quickly as I can. I use what I call the 3P rule when it comes to preparing an effective keynote. Purpose, premise, and points. The first thing to answer, the first question to answer when you're preparing a keynote is, what do I want my audience to think, feel, or do as a result of my speech? Now, we say that in 7-minute speeches, but at the end of the day, you want to know that answer solidly for your crowd. So, Clinton, do you know who you want to speak to?
I haven't defined. I've been speaking, but I've been speaking exactly where I'm asked to speak. I haven't defined a specific target audience. I was in the financial service industry, and some people are saying, like, focus on that. Because I'm out there new in the last year or so, I'm kind of going where I'm asked to go or where I'm getting paid to do. But that's why I want to focus in and says, who are my specific target? What I do is, like, I spoke just before the virus, I spoke to McAfee, Canada, I talked to them, knew what they wanted was Women's Day, and I geared my presentation to suit that audience.
Okay.
But to say I of myself is just saying I'm speaking to only a certain group. I haven't identified myself as a one, this is where I go to.
Okay. So that would be your homework. Find your audience. And one of my coaches for the marketing business side is Jane Atkinson, who lives in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I know Jane. I know Jane.
Clinton,
I know Jane.
And
yeah,
she always says, come up with your promise statement. So I help X do Y so that they can Z. So Karen's probably familiar with that statement, and she's working on hers right now. I help X do Y so that they can Z, right? So who do you help? What do you help them do? What are the benefits of that? Make that promise, put it out there, boldly claim it, and other groups will come in, right? So I think a lot of times people are afraid of narrowing down to one crowd, but when you do, other people will come in. I'm speaking to a retired teachers federation next year if this is all done. And I didn't apply to a retired teachers federation. It's just people kind of come in various areas, right? So that's number one. The first P is purpose. The second is your premise, which we mentioned. I help X do Y so that they can Z. And the third P is your points. So what points support your premise? So whatever it is you're going to tell your audience they can do, what are the 3 points they have to do in order to do that? I help first responders build resilience. They have to have accountability. They have to have accessibility. And I have about 5 or 6 A's, but I pick 3 depending on the audience I'm going to go and speak in front of, and they have to have awareness. And then I have stories that I filter in there. And I like to use alliteration, the same letter, so that I can say, okay, it's the 3 A's to building resilience among first responders. So those are my 3 points. So if you're talking about an effective keynote, that's your basic 3P formula. Does that help at all, Clinton?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much.
Okay. Moving on to number 4. But I think we kind of answered this. Corinne, this was your question. Most effective way to use Zoom to deliver a speech. I'm kind of with Karen on this. She says she likes the sitting down method. When you're in person and you can stand up and you can approach people, it's a little bit different. I find that I have to wear headphones to be heard properly or be close to the mic. I get a more personalized response by looking into the camera and being really close to the screen. So I would say that is the best way to go right now, unless you really have good mic setup and you can stand back and you have the volume at the same level no matter where you are. But I find that when people stand back, it almost feels like they're a little bit more disconnected from the rest of the people in the group, and we're in a conversation here. So it's more talking heads a little bit, but I like that approach. Anyone else going to online meetings that can comment on this?
I have something I can comment.
Sure.
I get me. 3 weeks ago, there was an online meeting, global online meeting. I don't know if you heard of it. Originated from India. And they attracted over like 4,000 people. It was a Toastmasters global online meeting hosted in India, but was people from all over the world. The keynote speaker was Mohammed Qatari.
Oh, yeah.
And he's the 2015 world champion. He did the thing Woods.
Yeah.
And he spoke something, and he gave an amazing speech sitting down.
Okay.
He never moved from a sofa. He did all his body language and everything sitting down because he felt in this atmosphere is more comfortable. This morning, I did another Toastmasters meeting again from India, and they were talking about how to conduct meetings on Zoom. And I'm just going to share a tip that they gave. It's more effective, the gentleman who was a technology expert said, to give it sitting down, because first, you always want to have the camera eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
When you're moving away, you know, he said, what you do when you're moving away, the further away, you're losing that eye contact from the camera. Don't talk to the screen, speak to the camera and move your eyes to the camera, just like how you're in a meeting. The other thing he talked about, some people sit back like how I would do. He says, take an angle bend and you're speaking and you're moving from here to here. But he recommends, instead of standing up, yes, we're not in a meeting where we want to see your gestures and you're walking, But if you can sit down and keep your camera, so I did that today. I raised my camera, eye contact, and be a little slower because the words had been translated. That was the tip that he gave today to handle Zoom meetings and to be effective. He said, avoid, some people may like it, but avoid standing back because they see in your body, but you're losing your effectiveness.
Mm-hmm. Those are some good
Okay.
tips. Ethel,
Yeah.
you're getting a lot here, aren't you?
Yeah, that again, Clinton, I really don't mind doing a speech sitting down, but when I have to talk in front of 75 or 150 people, I'm going to be scared as heck once I get, because I don't speak very well in front of more than 50 people. So that's where I'm finding this a hardship, because when it comes into reality that you actually have to do it, you're not going to have that training. And if we're going to go viral for the rest of our meetings, if we vote on that, I really have a fright of speaking to people, because I'm speaking to 7 people now and it's not a problem. And I can sit and I can use my hands and learn how to get the distance at the right level. But the point is, what happens in real life when I'm out there and I have to talk to 75 or 100 people? That's what I'm afraid of.
Okay. I'll jump in and just thank you, Clinton, for those tips, because that's really, really good. Ethel, one other tip I would add to that is if we can see even just your chest up, like you can see the way Karen's sitting, the way Clinton's sitting, you are just your head is in the shot right now.
I know.
For today,
I don't know how to.
For that's fine. You
Yeah.
might have to play with the angle. You don't have to do it right now, but play with the angle. Even if people can see more than your head, it adds a little more personality to the content, and it connects you a little bit better. So in the future, think of that, like Clinton said, camera at eye level and a little bit more of your body showing. My headphones are preventing me from going any further back, but do your best to do that. To your point with nerves and speaking, I don't know about you, but anytime I prepare a speech, whether it's virtual or in person, I'm a little bit nervous of how it's going to be taken by the audience. And you'd be surprised if there's 20 people virtually and you're preparing a speech and they say go, those nerves will still kick in. However, whether you're in person or online, if you've prepared and you know your content and you've done the speech enough times and you've internalized it, you will translate it over to 75 people. And I'm with you. If when we go to the convention, I'll be nervous speaking in front of 100 people too. It's natural. The energy that's in your body that causes nervousness is the same energy in your body that causes excitement. So once you know your content and you've done your speeches enough times, you will deliver that content. Even if you're a little bit dry-mouthed, you will deliver it well in front of 75 or 100 people. The content is king. Okay?
Yeah.
And then there's always, once we get going again, if your meetings are virtual permanently, go visit other clubs. All right, so there'll be opportunities. And there's also, this is for everyone here, there's places that are non-Toastmasters that I always recommend every speaker that's a Toastmaster go out and deliver a speech in a non-Toastmaster setting so that you know how different crowds react. I've spoken at Mo Mondays, I've spoken at Speaker Slam, I've spoken at Fearless Voices. Those are 3 brands that are here in Ontario. And every city, no matter where you're at, just look up speakers or just speaking nights. I'm pretty sure that any city you're in, you can find something. So Mo Mondays London, Clinton.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah,
yes.
right. So Raphael, I think they have Mo Mondays Toronto. They have Speaker Slam downtown. There's different ways that you can practice your stories that are non-Toastmasters. What I love about Toastmasters is that you can go every week and you can mess up, and there's a lot less pressure as far as people taping you and people from all over watching. But yes, if you get a chance, you'll find places to do live speeches again once we get over this together. Makes sense?
Can I just jump in here for something for Ethel?
Yeah.
This morning, Ethel, I watched a couple of YouTube videos about how to situate yourself to look best on virtual meetings. So that's why I changed where I'm sitting, and I'm still working on it because I've still got way too much light in my face. But it's definitely better than last time I talked to Kwesi. Definitely better. So I would just do some searches and watch some YouTube videos, and it'll really help you with where to put your camera and the lighting and all of that stuff.
Evelyn, 2 weeks ago at our Toastmasters meeting at Thames Valley, I was sitting exactly like you. There's only scene on top of here, and I'm adjusting. And I've learned that you put 2 lights to the right of you this morning. If you have 2 lights or 1 light in the middle, and let the light, whereas I used to have the light behind, have the light in front, a light in front of you, or 2 lights to the side. It could bring in, have a light on top. So I was sitting like you 2 weeks ago. But each time I attend something like this, I learn something and I'm adjusting it.
Yeah.
My problem, Clinton, is I'm
Good.
so white that any light on my face, I just go,
Yeah.
Is that why you're is that why you're an angel?
That's why I'm an angel, yeah.
Raphael, you had something to say?
Yes, I wanted to say, as far as the nerves and the jitters are concerned, one way I find of getting over that is to be so knowledgeable of the subject on which you're doing your presentation.
Yeah.
And when
For
when you're comfortable with what you're doing, you have the assurance that you are imparting information that would be of benefit to the people who are receiving it. And you must feel that sense of comfort in knowing your subject matter. And with that, you would find the level of discomfort and nerves will certainly subside, and you can do a good presentation. Yeah. My last presentation was in front of over 350 people. And it didn't bother me the least because it's something I'm very comfortable doing. And I was presenting on a subject on which I was very, very knowledgeable.
Remember this, Ethel, competence creates confidence.
competence, yeah.
Creates confidence, just like what Raphael said. You know your stuff, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. And the one thing I always have is a bottle of water with me because I tend to get dry mouth when I speak. So I always have that bottle of water, especially for longer speeches, like half an hour or longer. But yes, thank you, Raphael. That's really good. I sent a message to everyone. With
Kwesi, can you hear me?
Water, not coffee.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Who's speaking?
Malika here. Can you hear me?
Hey, Malika. How you doing?
Can you see me? Because I had some technical problems. I'm sorry. So
We
I'll
can
share
see
that.
You. We can see you.
Excellent. So hi, how are you?
Good.
Good to see you all.
Good to see you.
So I had a good learning. I'm still learning, I would say. I'm a forever student. And I wanted to say that before any meeting, Zoom meeting, especially if you know that you have some technical issues, meet up, basically communicate to your organizer, because that is something very important. And I am guilty of because we get into multiple meetings and we just leave that for the last moment, and that kind of delays the meeting. Perfect example was today. So I have a technical problem with one of my computer, and many of our actually people who are attending Toastmaster meeting, they have this very similar issue where the camera in the computer doesn't work and they have to hook up with the phone. I think somebody mentioned here. So, but if you communicate with the organizer who is saying it, there's a way that everybody will be on screen. So but that depends on the person who is having the problem basically. So they need to kind of communicate that before. So that's something I wanted to because you are all in multiple clubs, and I think this should go out, because many people drop out after a while when they see that they are not able to communicate or they're not able to say. And then I get messages and emails saying that they could not come in, So we are in between, we don't want to use the chat function. So there's a chat function that you can use as emergency to communicate. Secondly, I know this is a full professional speakers group. One thing what I learned is the content. So if your content is good and it's if you have faith, so personally as a speaker, one should have faith in their own content. If you have faith, then automatically you will be heard. So it's a lived experience that I had, and I had no faith because I know Kwesi has seen me before. So I didn't have this kind of confidence before. And the confidence came from the content, from the research, from the because you know your subject well. That's why they say when you fumble in a speech, this I learned from Toastmaster, only you will know it. The audience actually doesn't know it. Similarly, the content, you know it well. How you want to present it, again, you know it. It's just that then once you start speaking it and you're comfortable with what you're speaking, people will automatically listen. And that is happening now because we're in the field that I've got in, which is film, but I always was very nervous, and I'm still nervous when I see audience, huge audience. But I feel when the moment when I speak something I'm passionate about, it automatically comes. And that's what happened in Fearless Voices, which was a professional setup. And so that's how it's out there. So just we have to just seize the moment. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Malika. Absolutely. When you know your stuff, right? When you know your content, you get comfortable with it, and you believe in it. And she said something key there: be passionate about what you're speaking about. Make sure you care about it, and that will come out. And then you'll see serendipities come up where you find other things to add in as well too. But content is the key there.
But I think just for a second, what Raphael and what Malika just said is in relation to what others just said. A lot of speakers, and we have done that too, give speech, we're called canned. I have to give a speech, I pull something out of a book, I'm speaking on it. There's no relationship with the subject matter. So there's no passion coming from you. There's no interest, but you expect people to be interested in it. So it's important that Raphael said, I could go out and I could speak and I'm comfortable. Because you're comfortable with the subject. You have a passion for it. You have a relationship with the topic. Instead of just saying, let me speak about X, Y, Z because they want me to speak about that. Yeah. And you have a disconnection. Once that passion, if you ask Ethel to talk about her daughter, she can speak for her granddaughter. She could speak for 2 weeks. Right, Ethel?
Yeah, but I can't do a speech. You know my issues and what it is. And that's something that I have to learn. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do, well, not that I don't have to do it anymore, but I've had to give presentations at work. And one of the things I learned at Toastmasters is how to make those presentations more interesting for the audience, rather than this dry, factual presentation. So I wasn't passionate about the project, but I still tried to make it interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To what Clinton and Raphael said, I remember Dale Carnegie said, talk about what you have earned the right to talk about. So you have sometimes persons choose topics to impress their audience, and they haven't done enough research, or they haven't got the experience to support what they're talking about. So there's no real connection. So if you have to give a speech and you have the option to choose what the topic is, take that in mind. Talk about something you have earned the right to talk about. If you have to speak about something that you have not earned that right, then you need to research so that you have enough information, you're comfortable delivering that speech.
All right, well, lots of tools here, and I'll make sure that this recording is available, Ethel, so you can go through it. The last thing I'll say about that is mindset is a big thing too. If you go to my website, Communicate to Create, you'll see a self-talk tool that can help you with your mindset as well, just so that you can build that belief in yourself as well. So now I'll go on to a question from Karen. Karen sent in a couple questions. First question is, how long does it take for you to prepare a keynote? And before I answer, I will let Raphael answer because I know he gave a keynote recently for Black History. And tell us, how long does it take you to prepare a talk in general, if you can answer that question?
Quite easily, Kwesi. I am a member of an advisory committee on the Durham Children's Aid Society, and they were talking about the need to sensitize the social workers to the cultural differences among the children and family that they have to deal with. So they said, well, we may have to do some sensitivity training. And I volunteered They asked me if I can do it. I said yes. And it took a number of months to put it together because the presentation includes quite a few slides and video clips. And it can run anywhere from 3.5 to 4 hours with breaks in between, okay? And depending on who the audience is, the level of knowledge that they already have about the subject, and how deeply you want to get involved in it, you have to spend quite a bit of time doing a presentation. And the reward is that the audience would know if you're on top of the subject. If you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, they would easily tell, okay? And you come across very convincingly if you have researched and put the time into doing your presentation and preparing for it, because you cannot be prepared for any and all eventualities. Somebody is going to come up with something. But if you have the basic covered and you are so convinced of your presentation, you can sail through it quite easily. And as I said, my presentation is part of the training, even involving Durham Region Police Services. And there's a lot of work involved because you have to go back into the historical past in order to understand where we are today. You must also understand where we came from and how we got here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Raphael. I'm going to ask you, Karen, why did you ask that question?
Because I've heard different estimates, like for every hour you're going to speak, you have to be prepared to spend 3 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours preparing for it.
Okay.
So I was just curious
Okay.
how long it takes you.
And I think it definitely depends on what you're doing. I mean, Raphael's talking about a 3 to 4 hour presentation with lots of slides. I don't use a lot of visuals when I speak, and I'm speaking for 30 to 60 minutes. It really depends on your content. And I would say that, just like Raphael was saying, be well versed in your topic. Even though I share my story when I talk about resilience, I'm always reading about resilience so that I have stats, so that I can quote people who are way smarter than me when I do. So I quote PhDs, I quote people, authors, I quote doctors, I quote research. I always back up your truth with proof. So the time it takes, it really varies. What I try to do is make sure that I give myself a deadline. So I may have a deadline, like I'm speaking September 1st for a keynote, and of course that's a deadline given by the fact that I have a date to prepare for. But if I don't have that, I may say, okay, this week I'm going to get a new introduction done for this keynote. This week I'm going to do something else for a keynote. I don't worry about how long it's going to take me if I don't have a deadline. What I do try to do is give myself deadlines, like personalized deadlines, to get certain aspects done. And so the question is not a simple answer because it depends on how long, what stories you're going to use. I would say that make sure you're always rehearsing your stories and pieces of your keynote. So if you're putting stories in your keynote, make sure that you're practicing those stories, whether it's in Toastmasters groups or online. Always make sure you're rehearsing those and be verbalizing your presentation constantly. So whether you're out driving and do it in non-speaking atmospheres, so that you are good at presenting. Like you may be driving your car, okay, I'm going to do this introduction. Jump around to a different part of your speech. This morning, I'm going to do my third story right now. And just make sure you're always practicing. So yeah, there is some truth to, for every minute, you have to do a few hours of preparation, because that's just about refining your speech, right?
Okay.
So make sure you get an initial speech done. And when we did coaching, you remember what I told you, just get that first draft down. And then we can work on upgrading it and improving it from there too. And since it's you asking the question, I will go into the second part of your question. And you said, how many times do you rehearse it before giving it for the first time? And that, once again, it varies. And anyone else who has answers on this can pipe in as well too. But a lot, a lot, because I may have a story in there that I rehearse a lot, getting it down. Like I have a story that I told about when I got fired and I held a grudge against someone. I told that story for the first time in 2016, and I must have given it at least 15 times at Toastmasters clubs, my own Toastmasters club, plus using it as a guest speech to other clubs. And that's what Toastmasters is good for. I was honing that story. Now I may rehearse every other part of my keynote a lot more than that because I know that story and I have it down. I may go back and if I'm speaking to a certain group, change a piece of the story to personalize it for a crowd. So there's no specific answer, and sorry if I can't give you an exact number, but what you want to make sure that you have down pat are your intro, your conclusion, your stories, and your transitions. So what I see is that a lot of times speakers kind of fumble into transitioning from point to point, and their closing kind of just ends and they don't know where they're closing. They end with a Q&A, which you should never do. They are all over the place. And so the first words, the last words, and the transitions are the ones that really, really stick with your audience. I find that if I mess up on a story or two in parts of it, it's not a big deal. People are outside of Toastmasters are not counting your ums and ahs and your likes, right? So just practice, get it down, and then you'll get it better over time. It doesn't come out perfect the first time, and you keep working on it, working on it, working. And that's why I always say record every single speech you do,
Okay.
even if it's just audio.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything to add
Quincy?
to that? Phyllis, welcome, by the way.
Yes.
But yes, Ethel, go ahead first, and then Clinton.
We have a very talented girl in our club, and within 7 minutes, she can create a 7-minute speech. She gets her 3 topics. She finds all of the sentences that go with those topics, and then she tells the story. So you can be creative on a simple 7-minute speech. So I imagine it would take a little bit longer, or your stories are just going to be bigger. But she's very talented at showing us how to create a speech in 10 minutes, I guess.
Perfect. And that's Ted Corcoran's, Ted Corcoran does a workshop called How to Create a Speech in 15 Minutes. And I taught the workshop at my home club, and it was good. It was really good as well. And those are, you can put speeches together really quickly. If you're talking about a keynote that you want people to pay you for, yes, there are natural storytellers, probably like the person in your club. Believe it or not, I love storytelling. I teach storytelling, but I have to work on it a lot more than that. And that's me. Everybody's different. But if she has that skill, I would say that's awesome. Just make sure that when you're preparing a speech, always be thinking, how can I make this better and make it more effective for the people I speak to? Clinton, you had something to say.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, with what Ethel is talking about and what you're talking about, I think that's totally different than the keynote, that mind mapping, and we do that, and I do that, where you could just put a speech and put 3 points together. That's different to getting paid for. Going back to what you were saying, Kwesi, is what you were saying is about with the keynote. I think from your mentor, don't get ready, stay ready. And if you're going to be a keynote speaker, you have a couple keynotes together. And you're always practicing. So people say, I've heard people say, how long does it take to get a speech ready? If you're going to be a keynote speaker, which all of us are aspiring to do to get a big money for doing that, we have a couple speeches. And all you're doing is either all the time you're working on it like a performer, and you're just adjusting it to your audience. You listen to Les Brown, all his speeches, you're going to talk about, growing up in Miami, you talk about Jack Canfield, they always have your story, and then they build around that. You listen to Tony Robbins, a story about flying in and where he came from, and they build off a stretch. So you're always carrying out, have to have your story, and you're always practicing it. Besides, even when you don't have an engagement, but you always practicing your story. You're always working, so you know your story inside out. You know your message inside out. That's
when I'm doing a 5 to 7 minute Toastmaster speech, which I would normally give one of those once, I might rehearse it half a dozen times before I give it. But obviously, when you want to give a keynote and get paid for it, then you got to be a lot better than a Toastmaster speech.
I just sent you all a link for Judy Carter's The Message of You. It's a good book to read about creating your own keynote coming out of your own story. So it's something I recommend you read. It's a really good book. And I think I sent it. Let me know if you got it in the chat.
Yeah.
Yep, it's there.
I saw it, yeah. Kwesi, may I say something else
Yes,
also?
it's in the
Yeah.
chat. Uh-huh.
Okay, so Raphael and then Korean.
What I'm about to say is that you can have your keynote speech and make slight variation in its presentation depending on who the audience was. As I said before, I've been doing some training in anti-Black racism for the Durham Children's Aid Society and the police services. But when it came to the Whitby Historical Society, you have to be aware of who the audience is. So instead of coming out and saying, well, we'll be talking about anti-Black racism, which is a very uncomfortable subject for many people. Instead, I titled my presentation, A Few Things We Were Not Taught in School.
Oh, nice.
And of course, all of a sudden, everybody wants to find, what are those things we were not taught in school? And we teed up from there. And it turned out to be a very, very successful strategy. In other words, no one was hit over the head with this heavy subject. Instead, he's talking about a few things we were not taught in school, and everybody's ears were perked up to hear what it was.
Awesome, very creative. That's good. That's good.
And
yes, personalization.
By the way, Kwesi, if anyone wants, when this self-imposed quarantine is over, anyone wants to invite me to do a simple presentation, I'd be more than happy to do that. You'll benefit tremendously, I promise you.
Perfect. Raphael, type your name in the chat to everybody and your email address, and then people can stay connected. Okay,
I had a
Kareen.
quick.
So,
sorry.
okay, sorry, Malika had her hand up before Kareen, so I'll go Malika, then Kareen.
Okay, so I'm just asking for the same request. I am doing a web series on being how it is to be locked down and what kind of activities one is doing for personal self and others. It's called Save Lives and Safe Distance Save Lives. It's like a Me Too movement, and it's being done globally. So it's not just Canada.
Okay.
We are having participants from all over US, Australia, India, and some of Middle East. So I am trying, we have already it's in a very early stage, but we are doing this, and it's an 8-minute capsule. So I'll put my email out there. You can reach out and you can share your experiences, and you can also go to YouTube and check it out, see how it and I'm doing actually a speech on this in my Toastmaster Club to show how gradual progression it has been. So I never use Zoom so much. So it's a Zoom based also, plus also selfie videos, a lot of technique basically we are using, but it's good to see people sharing their stories. And there are lots of kind of speakers who have probably not given professional speeches as well, but they want to tell their stories. So just wanted to throw it out there, and it's there. Another thing is about, the question was for you, Kwesi, about feedback management. So what has happened is when we get into this keynote speaking and this bigger assignments, how do we manage feedback? And mentorship is not just one mentor, right? You have 2-3 mentors. So where do you kind of balance the feedback, and what do you apply, and what do you kind of say, no, this does not apply to my situation? I struggle with that even today.
Okay. Kareen, we're going to come to you in a minute. And Roger and Phyllis, I know you came in late. If you have any questions, we'll give you a couple minutes at the end if you have any. So I put in also another book that is from my coach, one of my coaches, one of my many coaches, in the chat if you want to check it out, by Jane Atkinson from Clinton's hometown. So with feedback, I'm assuming, Malika, you're talking about Toastmaster feedback on your speeches. I look for commonalities. So, I mean, I don't have any ego. I've been in Toastmasters for a while, but the person that walks in to a room for the very first time may have something valid to say about my speech. So I listen to everybody, but I look for commonalities. So I'm part of an advanced club, and there may be 10 people that give me feedback. If I'm hearing 3 or 4 things along the same theme, I know there's something to it. If I hear something out of left field, I'll write it down, but it may not necessarily enter into my rejigging process of my speech, if you know what I mean. So you'll get good at, I mean, you are already, you've been speaking for a while. You'll hear some feedback and it'll make you scratch your head. And if you're not sure if it applies, ask someone that you trust, that knows your speaking style, that maybe is a professional speaker. You can ask me, what do you think of this feedback? Here's the speech, here's the feedback, what do you think? So ask someone you trust if it's feedback that you're not sure if it should really be applied or not. But look for commonalities. You'll normally see a few different things. And when you hear feedback, try not to take everything in and change everything at once. Work on one thing, tweak it, and go from there. Does that make sense, Malika?
Oh, good. Thank you.
Karine, before I forget, you had a question.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. All right. We're probably getting to it from here on in there.
Yes.
So I want to let a couple people, before we finish off here, Roger or Phyllis, do you want me to unmute you for any questions or comments or anything to add to the discussion? Okay, Phyllis, okay. I'm going to unmute you. Unmute all. Okay. All right. Phyllis, I'm trying to unmute you. There we go.
Hi, Kwesi.
Hey, Phyllis.
I thought this started at 1 o'clock Pacific time. Obviously, I had that off. So I'm pleased to be listening to you and to this group. I did have a question, and this might be a naive question, but you were talking earlier about practice, which I understand. How do you keep your keynotes fresh? If you've done them a number of times, how do you keep it fresh for each audience so it doesn't sound mechanical?
Okay. First of all, Malika, I shared your email with everybody. You sent it to me privately. So that's why I wrote it out again. I shared Malika's email there. And who was it? Someone else wanted to share some information too. Oh, Raphael. If you could type in to everyone your information while I answer Phyllis here.
Okay. Kwesi, can you forward my email to the group, because I cannot find anywhere on my screen here on my iPad where I can type that information in. So you can
go for it.
You can send it out with everyone.
Okay. So what is your? Do you want me to just send it to me by email and I'll send it to everyone? Okay. Yeah. My email is open, so can you send it before we end today?
Okay.
All right. So Phyllis, making a keynote fresh. Some stories are obviously going to be the same. Try your best to relive your stories as you tell them. Always see yourself in the moment. Sometimes the story, you've given it so many times, you don't feel the emotion to it anymore. I use what I call the emotional eclipse at that point. So if I have a similar feeling that I've had in my life more recently than the story I'm talking about, I try to think about that moment as I'm telling the story. If that makes sense for the stories. When it comes to a keynote, making it fresh for my audience, if I'm going to speak at a conference, I will attend the whole conference and I will try to find some way to start my keynote that comes from the conference or something very recent. So I went to a conference a month ago and I spoke after a former undercover police officer, and she was doing a handshaking exercise. Earlier in the day, there was a guy who sang Gilligan's Island to the crowd. So I worked both of those into my introduction. So my answer to keeping things fresh is keep your ears and eyes open for other things going on or something that is specific to your crowd. If it's a one-off and you're not at the conference for a weekend or for the whole day, ask yourself what's unique to this crowd. You see Toastmasters doing in World Championship speeches all the time. They'll have Toastmasters references. If you're speaking for a group, look up their mission statement, go to their website, talk to people that are in the group and find something that you can mention, whether it's their slogan or something that you can bring into your introduction. It doesn't take much to make a keynote sound uncanned or fresh. It may be just a few points that you change in your stories or something you do in your introduction or something you do in your conclusion. Does this make sense so far?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. One other thing I do is I leave space as I outline my stories, and I actually call it my personalization moment. So there, I used to be a big wrestling fan, and there was a wrestler, and his real name is Dwayne Johnson. He goes by The Rock, and he used to walk into an arena, and every single arena he went into, he would grab the mic and he would say, "Finally, The Rock has come back to," and then he would say the name of the city, Toronto, and people would go wild when they heard their city's name. Why? Because he personalized his little monologue. 90% of it was the same, 10% of it was different. So is there a point in your story? Can you say, can you mention the city? Can you mention something that's personal in one or two of your stories and your introduction? Does that make sense?
Thank you. It does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Does anyone have any other personalization comments for Phyllis at all?
Kwesi, I'm going to draw something. I was watching an interview, I think a few years ago with Celine Dion, and she was being interviewed, and she was doing about a 5 or 6 year thing in Las Vegas. And she was asked that same question: how do you keep singing the same songs, the same audience every night and keep it fresh? And it's similar to what you said. She says, every night after, I find something a little different. Same song, but it's like I'm going out new, because I got to keep fresh, and like I'm speaking to a new audience. I'm going to find somebody in the audience to say something to that's not the same person. And she had said, just the little things that I do, I'm doing this for 5 years in Vegas every night. Same song, but just little things that I'm doing in the song that I have to keep it fresh in my mind, and the audience feel like I'm speaking to that, each individual audience. So something similar to what you just find, some little things she says to attach to that audience with that same song.
Yeah, and perfect, exactly. Now she's doing, and she's an even more advanced situation than we're at. Like, we may do a keynote, I may have done a keynote 10, 20 times. She's done Vegas shows 3 times a day, 365 days a year. Imagine
Power of Love, same
right?
song, Power of Love, in the show every night. And she has to make it different.
Exactly. And mentioning person's name. Yeah, if you can get the audience involved, Phyllis, I find that that's very helpful. I'll go up to someone and like, hey Bob, how you doing? And I may even talk to him beforehand. I'll look for someone that I had a relationship with before. But one thing I do is, if I'm speaking to people for the first time, I always go early. If there is a chance to talk to them early, have lunch with them, whatever, I'll shake hands at every table, say thank you for coming. Oh, I like your shirt. Just different things that can spark your thoughts as far as making it personal. And if you just personalize it just a little bit, people will come up to you and say, wow, man, that felt like it was just for me. Make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we are coming to the end, and I'm just going to open it up. I've gone through the questions that were asked, and let me know any thoughts on if this is something you'd want to see again, and if there's anything you picked up from today. Anyone can pipe in if you have any words that you want to say to before we finish off here. Anyone? And if not, okay, Raphael.
Let you know if we want to do it again.
Or, yeah.
I say yes.
Okay. So yeah, and I'm seeing Clinton saying, let's keep doing this.
Yes, let's do it again.
Raphael, the 84@yahoo.com, that's your email address? Oh, did he leave? Yes, he left. Okay, so I put Raphael's email in there as well too.
Where is it?
So I'm gonna stop the recording.